Listen closely, because what I am about to tell you is going to ruin your ability to look at your toaster, your car, or your smartphone without a creeping sense of existential dread. We are going to talk about the book Chip War by Chris Miller. Now, you might be thinking that a book about semiconductors sounds about as exciting as watching paint dry in a humidity-controlled room, but you would be wrong. Dead wrong. This isn't a book about boring computer parts. This is a horror story. It is a geopolitical thriller about how the entire modern world is balanced on the tip of a silicon wafer so thin that a single speck of dust could crash the global economy. We like to think we live in the digital age, right? We think we live in the cloud. We do not live in the cloud. We live on oil and silicon. And honestly, at this point, the silicon is more important. You can ride a bicycle if you run out of gas, but if you run out of chips, you cannot even buy the bicycle because the payment processing system is down. The factory that makes the bike frames has stopped, and the logistics software shipping the tires has frozen. Chris Miller wrote this book to explain that while we were all distracted by social media arguments and celebrity scandals, a handful of people and a couple of very specific islands basically took control of the off switch for the entire human species. The thesis here is simple and terrifying. Computing power is the new oil. It is the resource that defines military power, economic dominance, and whether or not you can watch cat videos in 4K resolution. But unlike oil, which can be found in a bunch of places if you dig deep enough, the advanced chips that run everything from AI to missile guidance systems can only be made by one company on one island that happens to be sitting in the middle of the most dangerous geopolitical standoff on Earth. Before we dive into the nuts and bolts of how we got into this mess, do me a quick favor. If you enjoy having complex topics broken down by someone who sounds like they have had way too much caffeine and read too many scary government reports, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It tells the algorithm that you are smart and attractive, and it helps me keep buying the hardware necessary to record these ramblings. All right, let's get into the meat of this. The first major lesson you need to take away from Chip War is that you have absolutely no idea how complex your life is. We need to talk about the miracle of manufacturing because we have become a civilization of people who think things just magically appear. Think about it like this. Imagine you want to bake a cake, but not just any cake. You want to bake a cake where every layer is the width of a single DNA molecule, and if you make a mistake the size of a virus, the entire cake explodes. That is what manufacturing a modern semiconductor is like. Miller explains that a modern chip has billions of transistors on a piece of silicon the size of your fingernail. Billions! If that doesn't melt your brain, you aren't thinking about it hard enough. The analogy here is precision. Imagine you are trying to hit a golf ball, but the hole is on the moon, and you are hitting the ball from a moving car in New York City, and you have to make a hole-in-one. That is roughly the level of precision required to use extreme ultraviolet lithography, or EUV, which is the technology used to make the most advanced chips. The book goes into detail about the machines that do this, made by a Dutch company called ASML. These machines are the most complicated devices humans have ever built. They cost $150 million a pop, and they involve blasting a droplet of tin with a laser twice in rapid succession to turn it into plasma that emits light at a specific wavelength. Why does this matter to you? Because it means the barrier to entry is impossible. It is not like opening a coffee shop where the competition is just the hipster across the street. If you want to compete in the chip market, you need billions of dollars and decades of knowledge. It is like trying to start a space program in your backyard using spare parts from a lawnmower. It's not going to happen. This extreme complexity means that there are no backups. If the few factories that can do this go down, we don't just go back to the iPhone 10, we go back to the 1990s, and nobody wants to go back to the 90s. The fashion was terrible, and the internet screamed at you when you connected. This leads us directly into the second core lesson, which is the concept of the choke point. This is probably the most important strategic takeaway from the book. We love to talk about the free market and globalization like it's this big open field where everyone holds hands and trades goods. It's not. The chip industry is a funnel, and the neck of that funnel is incredibly narrow. There's a concept in the book called the fabless model. This sounds like a fitness trend where you stop working out, but it's actually about business strategy. Back in the day, companies like Intel designed their chips and built them. That's like a chef who writes the menu and also cooks the food. But over time, Silicon Valley realized that cooking is hard, expensive, and messy, so companies like NVIDIA, Qualcomm, and Apple started just designing the chips. They write the menu. They are the architects. They draw the blueprints for the skyscraper, but they don't pour the concrete. So who pours the concrete? Who actually makes the chips? Enter TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. This is the company that Morris Chang built, and it is arguably the most important company in the world. They are the contract manufacturer. They are the kitchen that cooks everyone's food. Apple goes to TSMC and says, "Here is our design for the new iPhone chip. Please make 100 million of them." And TSMC says, "Sure thing." Here's the problem with that. It's like a group project in college. You know that one person who actually does all the work while everyone else just puts their name on the PowerPoint slide. TSMC is the person doing the work. The entire world relies on this one company in Taiwan to manufacture the cutting-edge logic chips. If TSMC stops, the world stops. Imagine if every restaurant in the world relied on a single guy named Dave in Ohio to bake all the bread. If Dave gets the flu, nobody eats a sandwich. If Dave gets into a fight with his neighbor, the global caloric intake drops. We have put all our eggs in one basket, and that basket is sitting on a fault line in the middle of a geopolitical hurricane. This consolidation happened because it's economically efficient, but it's strategically insane. We traded security for cheaper iPhones. Was it worth it? I guess we'll find out if the supply chain ever snaps. The third lesson is about the brutal reality of Moore's Law. You've probably heard of this. It's the observation that the number of transistors on a chip doubles about every 2 years. We treat it like a law of physics, like gravity, but Miller points out that it's not a law of nature. It's a choice. It is a relentless, exhausting treadmill that the industry has to run on just to stay alive. Think of it like the Fast and Furious movie franchise. The first movie was just about stealing DVD players. Simple. But to keep the audience interested, the next one had to be bigger, and the next one bigger. Now they're driving cars in outer space. That's the chip industry. You can't just make a good chip and relax. You have to make a better one immediately, or you're dead. This constant pressure to shrink transistors is what drives the cost up. It's why those ASML machines cost so much. We are reaching the limits of physics. We are trying to control electrons at a scale where they stop behaving like particles and start behaving like waves, jumping through walls where they shouldn't be. The industry is throwing billions of dollars at problems that are barely understandable just to keep the prophecy of Moore's Law alive. It's an addiction to progress. We can't stop. If we stop, the software bloat catches up. Our phones feel slow. The economy stagnates, and we all get sad. We are running a race against physics, and physics usually wins in the end. Now, let's pivot to the fourth lesson, which is the one that will make you look at the news differently. This is the weaponization of the supply chain. Miller does a great job explaining that chips are not just about consumer goods. They are the foundation of military superiority. In the Cold War, the Soviet Union had plenty of nuclear warheads and plenty of tanks, but they lost. Why? Because they couldn't miniaturize their computing power. Their missiles were dumb. American missiles were smart. The Soviets tried to copy American chips. They literally had spies buying electronics in the West, bringing them back to Moscow and trying to reverse engineer them. Here's the funny analogy for that. Imagine you're trying to copy a Michelin star meal just by looking at it and tasting it. You can guess the ingredients, but you don't know the technique. You don't know the temperature of the oven. The Soviets would copy a chip design perfectly, atom for atom, but because their water wasn't pure enough or their air filters weren't good enough, the chips wouldn't work. They were building cargo cult technology. It looked like a radio, but it didn't play music. Today, the U.S. is using this same weapon against China. The book explains the recent sanctions and export controls. The U.S. government looked at China and said, "Look, you can have the old chips. You can have the chips for washing machines and cheap toys, but the chips that run AI, the chips that run supercomputers, no, you are cut off." It's the geopolitical equivalent of changing the Wi-Fi password so your annoying neighbor can't use your internet anymore. Except instead of Netflix, the neighbor is trying to build autonomous drone swarms. By controlling the choke points, specifically the tools to make the chips, the U.S. is trying to freeze China's technological development in place. It's a ruthless strategy. It's not about fighting on the battlefield. It's about ensuring the other guy's weapons are running on Windows 95 while you are running on a quantum computer. The fifth and final core lesson brings us to the so what of the entire book. It's the Taiwan dilemma. If you take nothing else away, understand the precarious position of Taiwan. We talked about TSMC. They make 90% of the world's most advanced chips. 90%! That's a monopoly that would make a 19th century railroad tycoon blush. And this factory is located on an island that China claims as its territory and has threatened to take by force.
This is like if the only factory that produced insulin for the entire world was located inside a volcano that was overdue for an eruption. It is a recipe for disaster. Miller argues that this is what keeps generals up at night. If China invades Taiwan, the chip factories likely get destroyed or disabled. Even if they aren't blown up, these factories rely on real-time updates and supplies from the US, Japan, and Europe. You can't just capture a chip factory and run it like a captured tank. It needs the global network. So, if that supply goes offline, the global economy creates a depression that makes the 1929 crash look like a minor accounting error. No new cars, no new phones, data centers fail, medical equipment stops being produced. It is the off switch. This is why the US is so protective of Taiwan. It's not just about democracy, it's about the fact that Taiwan holds the keys to the modern world. It creates a scenario of Silicon Shield. The theory is that Taiwan is so important that nobody dares touch it because everyone would lose. It's mutually assured economic destruction. But history is full of people doing stupid things that hurt their own economies for the sake of pride or territory. Relying on the rationality of world leaders is a very risky bet. It's like relying on your drunk friend to drive you home safely just because he also doesn't want to crash. He might not want to, but his judgment is impaired. So, let's wrap this up and land the plane. What is the conclusion here? Chris Miller's Chip War is a wake-up call. It strips away the shiny marketing of Apple and Google and shows you the dirty, expensive, dangerous plumbing underneath. The main takeaway is that globalization as we knew it is dead. We are moving into an era of technological blocks. You are going to see the US trying to build chips in Arizona and Ohio. You are going to see Europe trying to build their own. Everyone is realizing that relying on Dave in Ohio for all the bread was a terrible idea, and now everyone is trying to learn to bake at the same time. But baking is hard. It will take years, maybe decades, to unwind this concentration. Until then, we are living in a period of high risk. Every time you pick up your phone, just remember that the brain inside it traveled across 3 continents, was touched by thousands of hands, and was etched by a laser machine that is more complex than the Manhattan Project, all to let you swipe left on a dating app. It's miraculous, it's fragile, and it's the most important story of our time. So, the next time your internet is slow, don't get mad. Just be thankful the sand is still thinking at all. That's it for the summary of Chip War. If you are now suitably paranoid about the supply chain, my job here is done. If you want to help secure my personal supply chain of coffee and rent money, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Let me know in the comments, do you think the US can actually bring chip manufacturing back home, or are we just burning money? I read every comment because I need validation from strangers to feel emotion. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.